has given the most remarkable, devoted service to the Queen, to my family, and to the country, and also to the whole of the Commonwealth.
A decision years in the making has finally arrived, and it has left Britain standing still. King Charles III, a man who spent decades watching the monarchy absorb scandal, adapt to change, and outlast every crisis thrown against it, has made an announcement that nobody in the country expected to hear with such finality, such clarity, and such permanent consequence. The future of Archie Harrison Mountbatten-Windsor and Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor, the two young grandchildren living their lives thousands of miles away in California, has now been formally addressed by the Crown. And the United Kingdom is still catching its breath. To understand why this announcement carries such extraordinary weight, you first need to understand what the line of succession actually means inside the British constitutional system. This is not a ceremonial list printed on palace letterhead and displayed in a museum. The order of succession is a living legal framework, a sequence recognized by Parliament and protected by centuries of constitutional law that determines who may inherit the British throne. Every name placed within it carries an implicit connection to the institution of monarchy itself, to its duties, its sacrifices, and its unbroken relationship with the British people. When a name disappears from that list, something constitutional and something deeply human disappears along with it. The question the palace has been quietly wrestling with for several years now is one that no official statement ever admitted openly. How could two children born into one of the world's most recognizable royal dynasties grow up entirely removed from British life, British public service, and any meaningful relationship with the Crown, while still holding a formal constitutional position within it? Palace advisors had long understood that this contradiction would eventually demand a resolution. What nobody quite anticipated was the moment when King Charles would decide that the time for resolution had finally come. Sources close to the palace have indicated that the decision did not emerge suddenly. It developed slowly, through private conversations, formal constitutional reviews, and moments of quiet reflection that the king kept entirely away from the public record. Charles is understood to have spent considerable time examining the philosophical question at the heart of the matter. Succession, in his view, was never designed to function as an honorary position. It was built on the premise that those listed within it would, if circumstances demanded, step forward and serve. That expectation of potential service formed the entire justification for the privilege attached to royal rank. What made this particular decision so painful was never the constitutional argument. The constitutional argument, once articulated clearly, was relatively straightforward for palace lawyers to construct and defend. What made it painful was the human reality sitting beneath every legal paragraph. Archie and Lilibet are children. They did not choose to be born into the House of Windsor. They did not choose to leave Britain. They did not select California over Windsor Castle, or private life over royal duty. Every choice that shaped the distance between their daily existence and the institution of the British monarchy was made by the adults around them, principally by their parents, Harry and Meghan, who made a decision in early 2020 that permanently altered the trajectory of the entire Sussex family. King Charles is understood to have carried the weight of that distinction very deliberately. The children's removal from the line of succession was, in the palace's own framing, a constitutional correction rather than a personal rejection. But Charles is also a grandfather. And whatever language the formal announcement employed, the monarch knew from the moment he authorized the decision that his grandchildren would one day read about it in terms no palace press release could soften or reshape. The reaction across Britain moved through several distinct phases within hours of the announcement becoming public. The initial response was one of genuine shock. Even those who had followed the Sussex situation closely, who had tracked every development since Harry and Meghan's departure from royal duties, were not fully prepared for the confirmation that Archie and Lilibet's constitutional positions had been formally and permanently addressed. There had been speculation, certainly. There had been commentary and analysis and opinion pieces in every major newspaper in the country. But speculation is not the same as confirmation, and when confirmation arrived, it landed with a weight that speculation never carries. The second phase brought division. Britain is not a country that speaks with a single voice on matters concerning the royal family, and this announcement was never going to produce national consensus. Supporters of the king's position argued that the decision reflected exactly the kind of modernizing clarity that the monarchy needed. The Crown cannot continue to list individuals in its formal constitutional order if those individuals have no relationship with Britain, no preparation for royal responsibility, and no realistic prospect of ever fulfilling the duties that succession implies. To maintain their positions on purely hereditary grounds, this argument ran, would reduce the succession itself to an empty formality. Critics answered with equal force. Archie and Lilibet, they pointed out, are not adults who made choices about royal service and then walked away from them. They are children, still young enough that the world they will inhabit as grown people has barely begun to take shape. Holding them constitutionally accountable for a geographical and institutional distance they never chose felt, to many ordinary British people, like placing adult consequences on entirely innocent shoulders. The image that circulated most powerfully across social media and newspaper front pages was not a photograph of palace gates or a formal royal portrait. It was a childhood photograph of the two children, side by side, unbothered and unaware of what was being decided in their names. In California, the impact was immediate. Harry and Meghan received confirmation of the announcement, and the atmosphere inside their home shifted instantly. Those close to the couple have described Harry's initial reaction as one of disbelief giving way rapidly to anger, not the performative anger of someone preparing a public statement, but the raw, private anger of a father confronting something he felt powerless to reverse. Meghan's response focused almost immediately on the children themselves, on what Archie and Lilibet would eventually come to understand about this moment and how they would be helped to process it. The couple faced a genuine dilemma in the hours that followed. Speaking publicly and aggressively about the decision risked drawing the children further into a royal conflict that Harry and Meghan had always insisted they wanted to protect them from. Remaining silent risked allowing the palace's framing of events to become the dominant and unchallenged narrative. It was a position with no clean exit and no option that felt entirely right. In the end, those close to the family indicate that the response they eventually chose leaned toward restraint, driven not by any acceptance of the decision but by a determination to place the children's emotional well-being above the immediate pull of institutional combat. What the palace made clear in its formal communications was the specific and deliberate limit of what had been decided. Archie and Lilibet were not stripped of their family identities. They were not publicly humiliated or formally expelled from any personal relationship with their royal relatives. The decision concerned constitutional rank and the formal order of succession alone. King Charles is specifically understood to have rejected any proposal that would have gone further, that would have severed every remaining royal association entirely. The boundary he drew was between the institution and the family, between constitutional position and personal bond. Whether that boundary proves meaningful in practice will depend almost entirely on whether the human relationships on both sides of it survive the damage this announcement has caused. William, the Prince of Wales and heir to the throne, occupies a position in this story that has been largely kept away from public scrutiny. He is the future king. He understood that a succession review was underway. His precise role in shaping the outcome, whether he encouraged the decision, opposed it, or simply accepted his father's sovereign authority, has not been confirmed publicly. What is known is that William has spoken in public about his niece and nephew in terms that emphasized family over institution. When asked directly during a public engagement whether Archie and Lilibet remained family, his answer was immediate and unequivocal. They will always be family. Those words traveled faster and further than any official palace statement because they sounded like something a human being actually meant rather than something a communications team had approved. For King Charles personally, this announcement represents one of the most consequential decisions of his reign. He came to the throne later than almost anyone had anticipated, inheriting the crown at an age when most of his contemporaries had long since retired, and he arrived carrying a full understanding of everything the monarchy had endured during his lifetime. He has spoken publicly and privately about his commitment to a slimmed-down, service-oriented monarchy, an institution that earns its place in modern Britain through demonstrable relevance rather than inherited privilege alone. The decision regarding Archie and Lilibet is, in many ways, the clearest practical expression of that philosophy that his reign has yet produced. Constitutional position, in Charles's monarchy, will carry an expectation of constitutional responsibility. Whether history judges that principle as a necessary modernization or as a cold institutional calculation applied to two children who deserved better protection will depend partly on what happens next. The announcement has been made. The succession list has changed. Those facts are now fixed. What remains unfixed, what remains genuinely open and genuinely consequential, is the question of what kind of relationship survives between this family and the two young children at the center of its most painful public rupture. Charles wrote privately to his grandchildren. The letter, by all accounts, did not seek to justify or defend the constitutional decision in legal terms. It acknowledged instead the separation between the role of sovereign and the role of grandfather, and it expressed something that palace statements rarely permit, a recognition that duty and love do not always point in the same direction, and that choosing duty does not mean the love has disappeared. Harry received that letter and chose not to open it on the children's behalf. He placed it somewhere safe and told Meghan that Archie and Lilibet would decide for themselves, when they were old enough, whether they wanted to read the words their grandfather had written. That decision, small and quiet as it sounds, may ultimately matter more than anything the palace announced publicly. It returned something to the children that the entire institutional machinery around them had temporarily taken away: the right to make their own choice about their own story. Britain has watched the royal family navigate crisis before. It has watched marriages collapse and abdications reshape the crown and public confidence erode and then slowly rebuild. The monarchy has always managed, somehow, to outlast the moment that looked most likely to define it permanently. What makes the announcement about Archie and Lilibet different is not primarily its constitutional significance, though that significance is real and lasting. What makes it different is the image it leaves behind. A grandfather, sitting behind a desk, signing a document that removed his grandchildren's names from a list. A father, thousands of miles away, reading those names and feeling something close. And two children, completely unaware, going about their afternoon while the adults in their lives struggled to contain a wound that neither constitutional language nor family silence had yet found a way to close. The United Kingdom is left, as it often is after royal announcements of genuine consequence, not with resolution but with questions. Whether reconciliation between Harry and his father remains possible. Whether Archie and Lilibet will grow up knowing their grandfather through his letter or only through the decision that preceded it. And whether the monarchy Charles is so determined to protect will prove, in the years ahead, that what it sacrificed in this moment was genuinely necessary rather than simply inevitable. Those questions have no answers yet. But Britain, and the world watching alongside it, will be paying very close attention to where the answers eventually arrive.